Councilman Brad.
Thank you. Discussion on item number 14, which is to amend chapter 45 of the code of ordinance. Yesterday we had many speakers to come down before City Council to talk about the safe passage or passing ordinance. And to individuals who probably was, listening, everything was about, bicycles and bicycles and bicycles, which I support riding bikes, and I support how the city is using connectivity to connect our parks. And I'm really pleased on how we're ready to, make the city a walkable city, a community where communities can ride to the nearest park, where they can walk to the nearest park, or they can connect all the parks. But one thing I just want to make sure that we don't need hindsight on why this ordinance is really, really important. Because this particular ordinance by amendment chapter 45, me and my colleagues, you have the item before you, that to let our constituents know, as well as our viewers that are watching this morning, that this safe passing ordinance will include pedestrian, including a runner, physically disabled person, to let our persons who are in wheelchairs know that we're thinking about you. We're talking about including, people who ride in wheelchairs that are on the street for some neighborhoods that do not have, unfortunately, they do not have sidewalk. We're talking about the motorists as well as the passenger, dealing with highway construction, utility maintenance and construction, our construction workers, our city of Houston workers. So when we think about this safe passing ordinance, we know there are some accidents that occurred to some of our employees because drivers was either driving too close or they failed to yield the right of way or whatever. But I just want to make sure that we get the message out there on the reason why we're passing this ordinance today. And I fully support this ordinance, but it's just not about bicycles. They was advocating for bicycles, but I want you to know this is about everybody, all of our pedestrians that utilize our roadways in the city of Houston. And so again, Mayor, I just want to thank everyone as well as Attorney Feldman for looking at this particular ordinance and amending it and looking at ways that we can protect our pedestrians as a whole. So again, I want to commend as well as Doris Bankin with the Office of Sustainability to look at ways that we can have rideable communities and walkable communities and connectivity. But we also need to protect the everyday passengers, motorists of our city, and that is what this ordinance is. This is what it does. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman McCollum.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Adams, for those comments. I'm particularly involved and passionate about this ordinance because I had the good fortune to serve in the legislature when we passed it on the floor in 2009, and we thought that was it, and that was going to be an ordinance, a bill that was going to apply to all of Texas. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed it, and so I just want to congratulate Mayor, everyone on City Council, hopefully that will vote for it, to show the courage that we can pass it in Houston if we can't get it through at the state level. It's very important. I'm a cyclist. I am slightly more senior in age than many of the other cyclists. Thank you, Councilmember Martin, for shaking your head at that. But slightly more senior than most cyclists, and so I have to spend a lot of time making sure I'm riding properly, and I'm okay. And particularly in somewhat of our non-existent cycle lanes. So you're looking at trash on the side of the road, you're trying to avoid it. It's so much better to have this ordinance in place so we're not worried as much about cars that are, and trucks that are passing us in close proximity. So I thank you, and I thank the City of Houston for the courage to move forward and pass it.
Vice Mayor Pro Tem Brad.
Thank you, Mayor. I know there are, in addition to the ordinance here today that's being proposed, there are transportation code issues as well, and primarily, as Councilman Adams has said, it's not just about cyclists, but a large chunk of their concern has to deal with cyclists, and this ordinance will place an additional onerous on motorists. I just want to go on record, you're just charging a greater responsibility for those cyclists out there. Very, very, very few cyclists that I see respect the rules of the road. They do. So I'd ask for the HPD, Metro, and the University Police, and whoever else has authority out there to start enforcing the rules, not just the onerous that we're putting on motorists here. Let's do this because we should protect those, vulnerable road users. True, but let's also let the cyclists know that they're going to have to comply as well with the rules of the road out there. Some do. So if you are a cyclist, you comply with the rules of the road. Practice, I'm not talking to you. But for the hundreds that I see every week that do not comply, with the rules of the road out there, and they're required to comply with the rules of the road and the transportation code, just like any other motorist. And many don't do that. So HPD, let's start issuing some citations out there to cyclists who are not following the rules of the road. Why? To help protect them as cyclists on the road and help motorists do what we're charging motorists to do more under this particular ordinance. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. And more education is needed on current laws for both drivers and cyclists. And while this ordinance does provide for additional protections to vulnerable road users, it does not exempt them from having to follow our traffic laws. We must continue to raise awareness that there is a diverse group of users who also have the right to use the road. Awareness of bicyclists and motorists to be more aware of bike lane markings, for example, and also to make sure that we're protecting those that use the right of way. The bicyclists and pedestrians are allowed to use the roads, but don't have the same physical protection, so they are more vulnerable. And with the increase in bike trails that we're seeing around the city, we are going to be moving more to where more people choose to use bicycles, as we heard yesterday, not only for recreational use, but also to get around. We do have an aging population, so seniors will have to perhaps walk to the store more frequently and use more of our right-of-way. So just trying to make sure that we are building awareness and also providing some tools in there so that we can send a strong message that all users of the right-of-way will be protected and the laws will be adhered to as well. And look forward that we're following the model of other cities as well, and just look forward to the passage of the site.
Councilmember Pennington.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to second Councilmember Bradford's statement. You may recall I asked the Cycling Association president yesterday if they had a safety program, and she answered affirmatively. That was the primary reason, and as Councilmember Green and I was speaking, just because there's a rule against a truck or a car being too close, it doesn't mean they won't get there, and so they do need to watch out in order to protect themselves. I think that we ought to have an enforcement program, if nothing else, to remind people that they need to be mindful of their own safety. And probably this ordinance won't change the bike usage very much, but it would be nice to see a report from the HPD or whomever to make an evaluation of the impact of this ordinance. We all know we have a terrific auto traffic problem in the city, and it'd be interesting to see whether the passage of this ordinance substantially inconveniences those people anymore, and we might make a different decision later on. I applaud the mayors and the other people's efforts, all of our efforts to improve bicycling in the city. I think it's viable, and I encourage the administration to come up with some routes that might be reserved to bike riders. I believe I think Mr. Lester made that suggestion. Places, routes where people could get downtown or where they might be going on longer distance basis. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Norrie.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention maybe some future steps as well. This does remind me of the whole everything I learned in kindergarten thing. If you've got a big car and there's a small person on the road, dude, take it easy. I mean, we need to be reasonable, and everybody needs to look out for their safety, and we need to not text, and you need to not tailgate. I'd like to see motorcycles added to this, frankly, because when you've got a power differential, you have the possibility of a real problem. My son had an English teacher in 8th grade who rode a pink Vespa to school every day. She had a pink helmet that matched. I'm not clear whether that comes under the motor-driven bike or whether it's considered a motorcycle and it's not included. I think anything that is two-wheel and can be knocked over probably needs to be included in this. But I really appreciate what this is doing. The other side of that is, as we do complete streets, as we have more pedestrians, as we narrow lanes, that means slow down, that means pay attention, that means you don't get to go 50 miles an hour down curvy. So everybody is going to have to work together to accommodate the fact that this community is going to double in population very soon. And all of us are going to need to mind the rules of the road in a different kind of way. So as we move forward, I'd really like to think about where that line is with motorbikes versus motorcycles, and expanding this just a little bit, but I really appreciate what this is today. Thank you.
Councilmember, it does apply to motorized bicycles and the smaller scooters. It does not apply to motorcycles above a certain size and weight. Mr. Dalton.
We follow definitions of the transportation code. If it's above 250 cc's, it's a motorcycle, and that's not a vulnerable road user. Anything under 250 cc's would be.
If you were the recipient of a clip by a mirror, you might feel differently, but yes.
But if I'm a runner and I'm followed by Harley, I think I'm more vulnerable.
Since council members were mentioning bicycle riders who violate rules of the road, we issued, in 2011, we issued 788 tickets to bicycles. 2012, we issued 688 tickets to bicycles. We issued more than 100 so far this year. I don't know the exact number, and I don't have an exact update, but we do, when it is observed by a police officer, they are ticketed. Any other questions or comments by council members? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Favoring, opposed, item carried.